Some people say we need a third party. I wish we had a second one. Jim Hightower, American syndicated columnist, political activist, author, and former commissioner of the Texas Department of Agriculture. All right. Welcome back to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. For tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy this show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. Some announcements really quickly here. Um, my my wife is going to Spain for vacation. Right? So what that means is I'll be on dad duty November 1st through November 10th. And so there's going to be some disruptions here to the show a little bit, and I'll talk about my absence in just a moment. But what that means is next week, and then probably that following Monday, the show will be at noon instead of at 7:30 a.m. So I will make sure to announce that, as much as I can so that you're aware, so that you know. But she will be out. And the reason for that is because, well, somebody's got to take the little guy to school. And so he has to leave at 7:30 right when the show starts, or roughly around there. So in order to get him to school on time, um, I will have to forego doing the show at 7:30 in the morning. And again, that's going to be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and the 11th. And then this was a more recent development just this morning. He has a field trip on the 5th. So there may not be a show on the 5th. We will see. Because um, apparently it got delayed and they chose the election day to do it. So I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I will let you guys know. Um, Also, this is an exciting development. This Friday will be my 400th episode. 400 episodes in. Um, you have to let me know, folks. Like, what should I do? I would like to do something really cool, but I'll be honest, I'm not so good with ideas and creativity in that sense. So I might just do a regular normal show. But if somebody has an idea, something that I could put together, relatively easily, let me know, and I'll consider it. Beyond that, let's get into the show today. What's going on with Liberty Dad? Where was he last week? I did exactly one episode last week. It was Tuesday. I had an interview with somebody, and then I was gone Monday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Well, I was, I'm going to try to offer an explanation really quickly without giving too many personal details. But basically, what happens is I have uh, something that appears to be a cross between like IBS and fibromyalgia. I don't really know. Doctors don't really have any answers. Basically, I have these periodic times where it's like there's a flare up, and just it's like my body just goes haywire on me. And I have all like there's a long list of symptoms that occur, like some serious acid reflux. Sometimes that goes throughout like for the whole day, like pretty much most of the day. I'll have hoarseness and constant throat clearing. That was one of the reasons why it was hard to want to do the show. I get everything from dry skin to anxiety. The anxiety is really rough. Like that's the really rough part for me, because you just start thinking all these crazy thoughts. You're like, well, what if it's this? What if it's this? What if it's this? And that ends up just making the whole situation that much worse. And it becomes very difficult to think and to focus on other things. So I had to just kind of step away and, focus on the bare minimum things, my job, my family, those kind of things, until I could get things sorted out. So that's where I was. So I apologize, folks. I will do my best to not allow that to disrupt the show. It only happens periodically, so hopefully we're good for quite a while now. It's hard to say. But that's where we are. That's what's going on. That's why I was gone all last week. And for those who do not follow me on social media, like Twitter mostly, you probably would not be able to, you just left in the dark. And so I apologize for that. If I had a good way of communicating that to people, I certainly would. So if anybody says, "Hey, DL, this is one way you could communicate," maybe I'll consider doing that. Should I have some sort of problem? But otherwise, we'll do my best to be as consistent with the show every day, Monday through Friday. We'll do my best, absolute best, because you're making an effort to tune in, and I want to make sure to deliver. All right. So enough on that. Let's talk a little bit about libertarians voting for Trump. So it seemed like all last week we had just a flurry of libertarians, very notable libertarians in many cases, some of them maybe less notable, coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm a libertarian, and in 20, such and such, 2008, 2012, 2016, whatever, I voted libertarian, but this year I'm voting for Trump, right?" And so like I'm still voting for Chase Oliver. So let's talk about libertarians voting for Trump. Now, I'm not going to trash my fellow libertarians. I'm not going to call them, not a real libertarian. That's not my thing. I don't really believe in that. I think it's counterproductive. Funny enough, the only person that I can really recall that I would say is not that I have said is not a libertarian is actually Trump. And it wasn't in the context of the normal libertarian arguments where somebody gets mad, they don't like someone else's opinion and say, "Well, you're not a real libertarian if you believe this or don't believe this." I actually was just stating it as a matter of fact. Like, hey, Trump's not a libertarian. He's a Republican. And in some areas, he seems like he's more like a Democrat, but whatever. So that's the only person that I've said. And again, it was out of the context of a matter of fact, not a retaliation, which tends to be the case. But I don't do that. I don't really decide who is and who is not a libertarian just because I think it's poor form and counterproductive. But I will say this, for those who are voting for Trump, I think there are basically three types of libertarians who are voting for Trump: those who always intended to vote for Trump, and those who were not moved by the libertarian candidate. In other words, they were maybe they were supporting a different libertarian candidate before we voted for our nominee, and they didn't like the one that we voted. So therefore, even though Trump has major issues, they've decided to vote for him. So in other words, these were people that might have otherwise been supporting the libertarian candidate if it were a different candidate, but have decided that that candidate did not earn their vote and simply have chosen between the remaining two options available to them. And then I think there are those who are just simply more aligned with the Republican Party. Now, this is not me saying there are libertarians who are really Republicans. What I'm saying is there are libertarians who have some variant of libertarianism in them, however much that is, whatever it amounts to. But when it comes to policy, they are more aligned with the Republican Party. They might say, "Well, DL, how is that even possible?" Well, many things are possible, right? Like a lot of people look at the situation differently. They make different calculations. They have different priorities in mind. So I think it's very possible that there can be libertarians who are indeed libertarian and still be in the Republican Party. A couple good examples: you've got Ron Paul, you've got Justin Amash, you've got Rand Paul. I don't know that he personally identifies as libertarian, but I know a lot of people do consider him libertarian, at least by the way he votes and talks. But Thomas Massey would be another. And then I'm sure there's many others that are, much smaller names that maybe are not readily identifiable or recognizable to the masses. But those are just some examples of people who I think would fit the definition or could say I'm a libertarian and happen to be in the Republican Party because they have made different calculations and different they've just kind of looked at the landscape differently and made a different judgment call. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to take anybody's creds away. It's not what we're doing here. I'm just trying to identify. And I think it's good to identify these things because then we can correctly identify uh, you know, we can identify their arguments better. We can focus on them because a lot of times people will say, "Well, you're not a real libertarian if you're not voting for the libertarian candidate." I don't think it's true. Because again, every candidate has to earn every vote, including the libertarian candidate. It should go without saying that a libertarian candidate is not just simply owed votes by libertarians any more than a Republican candidate is owed votes by a Republican or a Democrat candidate is owed votes by a Democrat. They're just simply not owed. And we need to stop acting as if they are, because that means that the candidates will then have to realize I have to earn every vote. And in some cases, the bar for earning the vote is crazy high. If Kamala Harris wanted my vote based on her record, the bar to get me to vote for her is crazy high. I don't see any situation where she could actually achieve that. It's not possible. Likewise with Donald Trump, right? Again, based on history. And not just history. And when I say history, I don't mean just their history, but their party's history. So, but I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this. Now, here's the thing. It's common to express who you're supporting. So I'm not really surprised when libertarians come out and say, "Well, I'm voting for Donald Trump." And there were the some of the folks at Reason who are like, "I'm voting for Kamala Harris." I think the number of people that are voting, the number of libertarians who are voting for Kamala Harris is actually pretty small. I think it's a much more substantial number who are voting for Trump. But it's common for people to come out and say, "Hey, I'm voting for this person or that person," right? Whether it's the candidate of the party that you identify with or whether it's a different candidate. And so I'm not taken back when I see this. In fact, here, let me show you something that I said a while back, which I still hold to. Where is it here? Is that it? No, that is not it. Did I not have it in here? Oh, no, I do have it. It's right here. There it is. Put this up on the screen. Oops. Let me. There. Don't need the music. So anyway, let's take a look. So this is what I said a while back. Why is it not? There we go. All right. So I said, if you simply won't vote Chase Oliver, the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee, because you don't believe he best represents you, cool. If you choose to tell people, also cool. If you actively work against him, then you are an enemy to the LP and frankly, liberty itself. And I mean that. I meant it then back in June, and I stand by that comment today. Now, that's different than just saying, look, this particular candidate has earned my vote. So therefore, I'm going to vote for them. Better luck next time. So if you're a libertarian and you're like, look, Chase did not earn my vote and Trump did, whether I agree with you or not on why, if that's the case, then no shade. No shade to you. In fact, I would say no shade to most libertarians because more than likely what's going to happen is I will disagree with their reasoning for voting for Trump. Okay? And that's okay. Because again, we have different priorities, we have different vision, people have different strategies, right? Some people say like, look, it's one thought in the libertarian community is that we know that it's either going to be Trump or Harris. That's what we know. I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. We know the third party candidates are not at a position where they can win on the national level, at least at the presidency, right? There might be some Senate or House seats that we could grab somewhere along the line. I wouldn't call that a widespread thing, but there may be a few, right? There's 535. Surely there's one somewhere that we can grab. That's possible to grab, right? But the president, that's very, very unlikely. That doesn't mean there's no value in it. That just means like, hey, let's be honest about what's going on. So a lot of libertarians might be looking at it and saying, okay, well, they might look at it and say, between these two, I think the policies were, as some people would say, the lack of policies from Kamala Harris is a problem, and a bigger problem than Trump. So they might look and just make the calculation and say, which tyranny am I more willing to deal with? And so then they make a choice. Now, others might make a different calculation. They might say, look, under Trump, I just don't think I could live with the things that he would support and the things that would pass under his administration. So therefore, they might calculate and say, I would rather be Kamala Harris, right? Again, we can agree. We can all agree to disagree on the details, but we at least have to understand correctly where people are, why people are doing that. Right. And I don't think it makes any sense to say, well, you're not a real libertarian. You're really a Republican. That may be the case, but I just don't find it a productive conversation to have. And so this is why I'm breaking it down. I think there's three kinds. I think there's three kinds of libertarians, right? That are voting for Trump. Those who always intended to vote for him because they looked at all the candidates and they just said, I don't like any of the candidates. They all suck, right? And I'm totally on the Trump train. And there are some people that are just once Trump hit the scene, they were on the Trump train. End of story, right? And there's a number of reasons for that. He comes across as anti-establishment, and he has fought the establishment in many ways. But there's a myriad of reasons. So there's those who always intended to vote for Trump. And I mean explicitly for Trump. I'm not saying they always intended to vote for the Republican, this particular Republican. Then there are those who were just simply not moved by the Libertarian candidate that was nominated and won. And they will acknowledge that, yeah, Trump has some problems, and but they're voting for him anyway, right? And then they go into detail about their reasoning why they would vote for him rather than say not vote at all, vote Kamala Harris, or vote for some other third party candidate. And then there are those who are just simply more aligned with the Republican Party platform. They may be libertarian. They may be for really, really small government, self ownership, and those kind of things. But at the end of the day, they may view the world differently and just say, hey, you know what? As it turns out, I can't have all my libertarian things that I want in society. So therefore, I'm just going to be aligned with these particular ones that I think are more feasible. So I think that's the generous way to look at it. And I think that's the best way to look at it, right? We want to look at take the most generous interpretation of people you disagree with till your hand is forced and you cannot do that. If you did that, if everybody did that, a lot of our infighting and all this nonsense would be gone. Okay. So it's common to express who you're supporting, and that's cool. So no shade to most libertarians. So if you're one of those libertarians who is voting for Trump, right, and you have not made it an effort, you have not made an effort to really run against I don't want to say run against, but you have not made an effort to push against the libertarian candidate. In other words, you're not one of those libertarians that are like, oh, look at Chase wearing a mask here while he was doing liberty stuff and I was on my keyboard. If you're not one of those, then no shade to you. Now, if you are one of the libertarians who's voting for Trump, and again, no shade on the voting for Trump part, but you have made it a point to run interference against the libertarian candidate, then I do have some shade for you because I then I question, a lot of things about you. You know, it's one thing to support a candidate; it's another to actively work against another. So let me ask. Let's put it this way: if you are, and now, are you working against other candidates just as well? Probably not. So though you might. So, and if you are, then I guess there's an argument to be had, right? Like, hey, I'm supporting this guy. But I look at it and I say, if you're a libertarian, I think, and you're voting outside of the party that you would presumably most identify with, um, then I would say it's probably best in proper form to not run interference against the candidate that is with the party, that is representing the party you claim to identify with. So if you claim that the Libertarian Party has principles that are aligned with your principles, then I think it's counterproductive and harmful to the party to run, to not, all right, I keep saying run as if you're the candidate, to come out against the candidate rather than just simply support the candidate you prefer, right? Like that's fine. And I would say the same thing for the Republicans and the Democrats. Like if you're a Democrat and you're like, look, I don't like who they put up and I'm going to vote for somebody. Maybe there's some Democrats out there that want to vote for Chase Oliver. I think it's poor form for them to go out and push against their candidate. Rather, just come out and say, look, my candidate, the candidate of the party that I align with, does not represent me. But this candidate over here does. So therefore, I'm voting for him. And this is why I'm voting for him. Now, I say all that because I'm not a fan of what you might call defensive voting or voting against somebody else effectively. You know, I'm not really a big fan. I don't think it's a good strategy. Um, but I am a fan of voting for somebody that you can get behind and letting people know, because this is how we communicate our message, right? It's easy to say, I don't like Kamala Harris because of this policy, that policy, this policy, and she's terrible about this, and she slept with Willie Brown, right? Like fine. You could say all that stuff, but that doesn't, none of that actually goes toward promoting liberty as you understand it. So if your focus is on being against some other candidate, then you're taking away the limited amount of time that you have to communicate your ideas about liberty to other people. And when it comes to an election, one of the best ways to communicate those ideas to people and candidates and let them know what you're willing to support and what you're not willing to support is to say, I'm supporting so and so because they have this policy, they believe this thing, they believe this thing, whatever, right? That's to me the way to promote liberty. This is why I made that comment. I said, you're an enemy to liberty because you're spending time that you could be using to promote liberty to just talk against somebody. So you wasting your time. And I would say that applies to any, if there's a Democrat that believes that liberty is best found through Democratic policies, Democratic Party policies, then they should do the same thing. And if there's a Republican who believes that liberty is advanced through Republican policies, they should do the same. They shouldn't spend their time crybabying about their candidate that they don't like and how some other candidate is totally better, some other candidate in a different party. Now, if it's within the party, well, that's a different story, right? You can have that argument. You can say, like, look, I think, of these 5 people, these 3 are pretty good and these 2 terrible. And these 2 aren't going to be, who should represent us. So in that time, it's fine. But then once we get to electing that final person for, like the president, um, then it's time to decide, how are you going to communicate liberty? And you don't communicate liberty by being against other things. There's plenty of things to be against, and that doesn't tell people the proper view of liberty. So if you want that, because remember, and I'm talking, this is a little insider baseball on the Libertarian Party. There were a lot of people who said we need to steer the party in a different direction, and it's about messaging. Well, guess what? Messaging is included in when you talk about the candidates that you support. And the truth is, for For the Libertarian candidate, he is promoting and advancing liberty. Now, you can try to argue your way out of a wet paper bag and say, no way, that's not true, but you're wrong. And I've done videos on this and we've had these conversations, right? It may not be to your liking, but he is promoting liberty. And I can kind of prove it with a hypothetical. Imagine for a moment that Chase Oliver wins. And let's say that he got to implement everything he wanted. There's not a soul out there that could, with a straight face, tell me that that liberty in the United States wouldn't be immeasurably better. Not a single person. Now, there may be things they don't like, right? There might be things that they say, well, we need to fix that. We need to fix this. But they cannot tell me with any seriousness that it would be we'd be worse off. There's no way. No way in the world. I mean, the man is anti-war, completely anti-war and anti-giving money to any other country. That alone would radically change this country. Just that right there. That one thing would radically change how we exist. So, and there's a whole lot more I could wax on, but that's the point I want to make there. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to make some people mad, and I'm going to stand by this too. If you were a libertarian who ran as a candidate for president or vice president, and I'm talking about it for the 2024 election, and you now are supporting Trump vocally, you should not be considered for any elected role in the party for a very long time, if ever. And that's going to make some people mad because there's at least 3 candidates that were on the that were trying to get the president and vice president nomination. There's at least 3 that have come out and said, I'm supporting Trump. And they've given, like, some of them have given like extremely long-winded explanations. At the end of the day, though, unlike the regular libertarians, you ran as a libertarian candidate for that role against Trump. Trump was already in. It's not like he jumped in at the last minute and that changes the dynamics of the election. No, you were running against him. And more than likely, almost a guarantee, you were laying out all the reasons why you would have been a better candidate than him. And all of those reasons that you opposed him still exist. They didn't change. Okay. So I look at it and I say, this is different than when, like, say, Republicans lose in a primary and then they go on to support the winner. That's different. That's within their party. There's at least some expectation that all the candidates share some level of values, right? But that's not the case between parties. Because at least they were still supporting the people that generally share their views. But I can't help but wonder, for those candidates, how they would have acted on the campaign trail had they won. Right? Like, think about that. Had they won, would they be singing Trump's praises as our candidate? Yes. The answer is recent candidate. I'm sorry, I'm jumping there. But to the question of should candidates remain loyal to the party during at least during the same election that they sought a nomination, the answer to that would be yes. They absolutely should, especially with the Libertarian Party. We are radically different than the big 2, than the Republicans or the Democrats. We are radically different from them. Not a little bit. It's not like when we say, oh, the Democrats and the Republicans, they're basically the same, the uniparty. No, we are absolutely different in so many ways, and it's radically different. And so either these candidates, they believe it, that we're different, or they don't. And I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe they didn't really believe it. Now, I get it. Maybe they have their reasons why. And you can vote. You can always vote for whoever you want. And I don't really think voting in itself is a litmus test. But I do think who you're vocal about can be a litmus test. If you're a party officer, you have a duty to the party. People voted for you to do the duties, whatever position it is, do the duties for the party and advance the party. That's what people voted you for. They didn't vote for you to waffle and say, well, maybe actually this guy over here in this party is actually a little bit better, or he should be supported. That's not why people voted for you. If you're an officer, if you are running for office or trying to get the nomination from the Libertarian Party for a particular office, and people were voting for you and giving you money, they weren't giving you money. They weren't showing their support so that you could turn around and be like, yeah, but I'm going to support this guy because I didn't win. That's not like, I mean, there might be some, but on a general basis, that's not why people were supporting you. And so I think you kind of fly in the face of members when you do that. So I oppose it. And I think if you were a candidate and you were running for president or vice president for 2024. Now, if it's a different year, whatever, at least it's a different election. You've had a whole year, or I'm sorry, you have had a whole 4 years, to reconsider different things and, whatever. But if it's the same year, then no, you need to remain at least verbally loyal to the party. That means you could do one of two things. You could say, I'm supporting Chase Oliver, or you could shut the heck up and not say anything. And then after the fact, tell people and say, well, I voted for this person and here's why, but I didn't come out prior to the election because I felt it was, there was some level of duty. And I want people to know that I was actually serious about my campaign and that they never have to worry that if they elect me to run for an office, that I'm going to suddenly support some other candidate. Right? Because at the end of the day, this is how you get and maintain support long term. And this is how you build a reputation. Ron Paul had a reputation for voting no because he voted no consistently. Like there's like one vote or something out there where he voted yes and people hit him on. And I guess and my understanding is that he looks back and says, yeah, I should have done that. Right. But he gained a reputation because he was consistent. And so if people on the party can't be consistent, then they don't belong getting our vote. Not for an officer position, not for a candidate position. So if you ran, again, one more time, if you ran as for the Republic, if you ran for the Libertarian Party's nomination for president or vice president, and then you are now vocally supporting Trump. I'm not saying that you're going to vote for him. That's not the issue. It's not the issue of who you vote for. If you're vocally supporting him, you should not run again, because I will remind people that you cannot be trusted, period. And that goes for an officer position. That goes for a candidate position. You simply can't be trusted. You've lost my faith. And we would be better as a party for if everyone had that attitude. Now, I'm voting for Chase Oliver, not out of party loyalty, as many like to claim, right? Party loyalty as an officer prevents me from outwardly supporting non-libertarian candidates. Talk about that more in a moment. But I'm voting for Chase because I have 3 priorities. Number 1, when I look at a candidate, I want to know, what issues are you running on? It's really important. Like if you're running on issues that I identify that I support, then that gets my attention right away. Now I got to look at you. Number 2, do those positions match the seat that's being sought? So if you're running for city council and you're talking about abortion, I'm probably not going to vote for you, even if you're a libertarian candidate. The reason is because you're talking about an issue that's misaligned with that seat that you can't do anything about. So I want to hear you talk about issues that reflect the seat that you're trying to get. That way I know what you plan to do. That way I know if I need to hold you accountable. If you tell me as a city council, if you're running for city council and you tell me that you will not vote for any budget if it doesn't have a certain condition, right? Whatever, just think of whatever condition you might, but just say you'll vote no on every budget that comes your way. unless it meets a particular condition. Well, great. That's a campaign promise. Now, and that's relevant to the role. So then if you get elected, if I vote for you and other people vote for you, and then you get elected, and then you start voting for things, for budgets that don't meet the criteria you said, now I can hold you accountable. But I can't really hold you accountable if you run for city council, you talk about abortion, right? Because it's not in the purview of city council. You talk about abortion, and then you get into office and you do all these other crazy things. Well, I can't really hold you accountable because I elected you. I helped get you elected on the basis of something that was not even relevant to your position. So that's my second criteria. Do the positions match the seat being sought? And then the third criteria that I have is how much do I believe you will accomplish them, or at least make a clear and unambiguous effort towards doing so? So that would be like that second part there kind of covers, Congress and the president, because, I can vote for a president that says they want to shut down the Department of Education, or they want to shut down the Federal Reserve or audit the Federal Reserve. I can vote for them, but I also got to consider, like, what is the likelihood that they're going to be able to accomplish those things, right? Or at least try, right? So if they at least use the bully pulpit to talk about it, right? Then that's kind of a win, right? Because they can't president isn't king. They can't do everything. They can't do most things that they promise, because it requires funding, which comes from Congress. It requires, like if a president says, look, I'm going to take us to war. Well, they can't, because they have to have a declaration of war. I'm just using that as an example. But there are certain things that a president requires Congress to be able to accomplish. And if you're a Congress member, you have to get the buy-in of your other congressmen. Just one congressman saying, I'm going to do this, you can submit all kind of bills, but if nobody supports them, then you can't accomplish them. So I don't want to hold that against somebody if they've at least made the effort to try. So that's why I add that in there, like, make a clear and unambiguous effort towards. So if you run for Congress and you say, I'm going to submit a bill, bill after bill, I'll just submit bills to end qualified immunity. And then you don't do that, I can hold you accountable. But if you do submit a bill and it's a decent looking bill, I read it and I say, yeah, that's a pretty good looking bill. And then the rest of Congress just doesn't get on board. Well, I don't want to hold that against you because you at least tried. So those are my three criteria. Let's talk about issues that you're running on, whether those issues match the seat that's being sought, and then how much I believe you will either accomplish them or make a clear and unambiguous effort towards accomplishing. That's my three criteria. That's why I'm voting for Chase, because I believe there are some things that he can't do, but he is running on issues that I agree with, right? The issues that are actually part of his campaign are issues that I agree with. They're relevant to the seat that he's seeking. And that I believe that if nothing else, he would at least make a clear and unambiguous effort towards accomplishing, even if I believe that he's not going to necessarily get elected. Now, occasionally, I'll do a protest vote. I don't like an R or D, or if I don't like the Libertarian candidate, I might vote for an R or D. That's not really happened just yet, but it's possible, right? But I would be quiet about it as long as I am in any position of quote unquote authority in the party. I generally don't vote defensively. So I don't generally say, oh my God, there's a R and a D in there, and if that D gets elected, all hell's going to break loose. I better vote for the R just to make sure. I don't generally do defensive voting because I don't think it works. Um, so, but I will say this, because a lot of people like to make the claim that I am so, party centric, I'm party focused, hyper focused on the party, right? I'm partisan. Let me show you a couple things and then we'll go to intermission. We'll come back and we'll do a video review. So here's a couple of images I want to show you guys. Let's see here. Take that off. So here is a ballot selfie from 2020, I believe. And so you may or may not be able to see it, but you might, I can't zoom in on it, but it shows that I gave my vote to Joe Jorgensen. And then over down to the right in the bottom here, it says soil and water. I voted for somebody named Carter Jones. He is a Republican. Okay. So this was during the 2020 election. I voted for the Libertarian for president and then a Republican locally here for soil and water. All right. Let's take a look at another picture here. So I believe this is just a zoomed in version of that. So again, Joe Jorgensen, we can see Carter Jones there. It was a nonpartisan election, but he is a Republican. And then down here at the bottom, we can see Duval County Clerk of Court. So there's a Republican and a Democrat. And I voted for the Democrat. Why? Well, when I went to Jody Phillips' website, he had nothing on it, not a single policy. And when I reached out to him, I heard nothing back. Okay, I have no idea what I'd be voting for. Then I talked to Jimmy Majette and I said, what do you want to do? And he had some ideas that were local to Jacksonville that I thought were good ideas for clerk of court. And I said, you know what? I'm going to support those ideas. So I did. And I voted for him. And I took a ballot selfie because I take a picture of whatever I damn well please. All right, here's another one. This is the sheriff. In the sheriff election, I voted for Lakeisha Burton. This was kind of more of a protest vote. So I wasn't really excited about Lakeisha Burton or TK Waters, both running for sheriff. But I voted for Lakeisha partially because when I reached out to both candidates as the officer or as the chair here in Duval, I got Lakeisha to come out. She came out and she spoke to the Libertarians. And I heard nothing back from TK Waters. So it was kind of a protest vote to say, like, look, screw you. You didn't even want to come out and talk to us. So you're not going to get my vote. Right. Is that a great idea? Not really. But I mean, you could argue and say, like, it's not really the best way to do it. All right. Last picture here. Then we'll go to intermission. All right. Here. What? DL? What are all these Dem votes here? For mayor? DL voted for Donna Deegan for mayor over Daniel Davis, the Republican, over Jason, for the property appraiser, the Democrat, over Jason Fisher, city council at large 5, the Dem, Charles Garrison over Chris Miller, the Republican. Yes, I did. And you know why? These were also protest votes because I was voting against the Republican establishment. I had a beef with the Republican establishment for a myriad of things. And so I said, you know what? I will not vote for you guys, even if, as a rule of thumb, the Republican Party tends to be, if you force me to say, DL, outside the Libertarian Party, which party do you most identify with, the Republicans or the Democrats? I would say the Republicans. But in this particular case, I was protesting the establishment Republicans for a lot of reasons that we're not going to get into. But I just wanted to point this out because a lot of people do, like, I get it all the time on social media. People are like, oh, dude, you just party over principle. No, you're just ignorant. You don't really know what you're talking about. And I have the receipts to prove it. I can show where I, even as an officer of the party, right, have voted for Republicans and Democrats. I got the proof right there. It's not always a libertarian or no vote. Now, so far, I like libertarian candidates more than the Republican or Democrats candidates. And I don't really have too many opportunities to choose. Like, it's usually just the president. I think this year, well, sometimes the Senate for Florida, but generally I don't have that option. And so there's not going to be too many situations where I might actually prefer the Republican or the Democrat over the Libertarian. Statistically, it's just likely not to happen just because I have fewer opportunities in the first place. Okay. But it does happen. So for everybody out there that keeps saying, DL, you're just party over principle. No, you're just ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about. And I got proof. But do you? Do you got proof that you will vote for the Republican or the Democrat? And can you show it and then say, here is why I voted for this particular candidate and this particular candidate and how I feel like it goes toward liberty? Can you show me that? I mean, if you can, great. But I'm willing to bet that a lot of my haters can't. So there, in your face, suckers. All right, let's look at some comments here really quickly, and then we will go to commercial or whatever you want to call it. Let's see. I'm reading these and I'm going to do. Let's see here. Let's see. I think I can answer this one. How about doing an opponent party and voting for a weaker candidate so your preference can win? It's been alleged. I mean, that's possible. That's fair. I mean, there are all kind of reasons why somebody would, uh, you know, vote outside of their party. And I try to be flexible with people and say, like, look, if you just found somebody more appealing or you got a different strategy, fine, we can agree to disagree. Let's see. It's an interesting comment. If you're not active in politics, there is no reason to register or align with a party. I'll have to think about that one. I'm not sure about that one. Off the cuff, I want to disagree, but I don't know. I might. Let's see. That was from Keith. That was from Keith. Yeah, was that Keith? Yeah, Keith Garrett. Let's see what else we got here. Yes, here's a good one. If Chase was president, that Liberty lady says, he would free Ross and others. There's no doubt. Absolutely. And here's the cool part. Um, the only objection there is whether or not he could win, but not whether he would do it. It's a given. It's a given that he would. I have no doubt. I am more confident that if Chase won, he would free Ross than I have confidence that Trump will. Now, I have more confidence that Trump will likely win over Chase. So therefore, in this context, it's more likely to happen with Trump, but only by the virtue of him being more likely to be elected, not because I actually trust him more. I actually don't trust him to follow through on his commitments, or on his campaign promises. Let's see here. Yes. Oddsman says a commutation is a weak sauce version of free Ross, better than nothing, but Ross deserves a full pardon, just like the swamp got and didn't deserve. Damn it. I agree. Full pardon, 100%. All right, let's see what else here. Do 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 do. Bum bum bum. Okay, I'm going to read this. So Brian Fleming says the LP needs to stop the desperation thirst. It's at every level of the LP. We are desperate for manpower, money, and viability. It makes the LP weak and keeps bad actors in positions. I agree. A little insider baseball there, folks. I think that we need to never allow ourselves to become desperate, because what happens, and this is very normal human behavior. Okay, so this is not like libertarians only are doing it. It's very normal that if you haven't gotten something, that you start lowering your standard, right? That's like, if you're let's put it in a different context. If you're a guy and you've been out trying to be on, and you're out on the dating scene and you're having a difficult time finding women, then you might lower your standard and accept a woman that you're not really going to be happy with, just so you can have, because it's like something is better than nothing. And so it's very common and it happens all over the place, right? Like, like if you're looking for a job and you can't find a job, you more than almost certainly will accept a job that you don't particularly like, so that you have something rather than nothing. And I think it's the same in politics, and we have to be very steadfast. But I think that's why my approach that I just described allows you to be a bit of a stalwart in that area. I can continue going on because I'm not only waiting for the great libertarian candidates. I've voted for people. Some of them have been, some of them have ended up being elected. Some of them have not. Right. And the only difference is that I didn't say anything about it if they were outside the party until after the election. And I said, hey, this person earned my vote. But I did manage to keep true to the party, because what's the point of a party if you believe that it is absolutely different than the other parties, radically different? If you believe that, what's the point if you're just going to turn around and use lazy thinking to say, I'm just liberty over party. I'll do whatever advances liberty. You'll do whatever you think advances liberty, but actually, will it? That's the real question. And that's the part that I question. And that's why I don't take the approach and I criticize others for it, because I believe that they're mistaken, that they're just caught up, and they're effectively in a crude way, they're desperate. They're desperate to be relevant. And so in doing so, they will lower the standard and accept what they might not otherwise accept if they had the options that they wanted. So anyway, all right, let's go. Excuse me. Let us go to intermission here real quick, and then we'll be back with a. I'm going to show a video, and I will do some commentary on it. All right, let's see here.
For years, Matt Johnson was a fighter for freedom in the GOP, believing they were the party of limited government and maximum freedom. He was wrong. The GOP has betrayed our trust over and over again. When COVID hit, it wasn't Florida Democrats in charge picking winners and losers. It was the Republicans who locked the state down, crushing small businesses. The GOP's promises of liberty are nothing but brazen lies. They've proven it time and time again. They campaign like they're limited government libertarians, then rule like dictatorial Democrats the moment they're in power. Meet Matt Johnson, the bold libertarian voice for Florida House District 29. He left the GOP for the Libertarian Party because he stands for freedom in practice rather than in hollow promise. If you're tired of government intrusion in your life, stop voting for it. If you don't like what your children are being force-fed in government schools, vote for the freedom to choose the best education for your kids without exceptions. If you're sick and tired of government bureaucrats standing in the way of your ability to run your business, vote to cut the red tape. Matt will slash permits and fees, letting entrepreneurs breathe, thrive, and feed their families. We're adults. It's time to grow up and run our own lives. End the overreach, empower the people, vote genuine liberty, and stop buying the GOP counterfeit. Stop doing the same thing and expecting different results. Vote Libertarian. Vote Matt Johnson for Florida House District 29. Because freedom isn't just an empty campaign slogan. It's a fundamental foundation for a thriving future. Volunteer and donate now and join Matt Johnson in reclaiming our freedom, our future, and our foundation. Because liberty is life.
All right, we're back. One more comment that I wanted to throw up here before we move on to this video. Time surfing alien points out, been lied to by both Republicans and Democrats, and I do not trust anyone who is running as either. That is generally a rule of thumb for me. I do not trust them. But at the local level, sometimes I can at least get to know them because they're local, and that sways my vote. But the higher up we get, the closer to the federal we get, the less I trust them. For many, many reasons. All right, let's get into this video here real quick. I am going over, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway. Well, this might be an hour and a half show. We'll just have to, I guess this week, maybe at least this episode, I will be making up for lost time. So hope you guys enjoy it. Let's see what we've got here. All right.
I'd like to speak for a second about a woman running for president. When I created this project, I went back and forth with the name. I decided on girl deliberately. Despite the fact that men remind me daily I'm not a girl, but an ugly old hag, I chose the name because I believed most women still connect to the girl inside us. And because men aren't put off by girls. They're not intimidated or emasculated. A girl is approachable. A woman is a problem.
Okay, so let's just stop right there. So if you don't know who this is Politics Girl. And she has her own channel. She's through Midas Touch. I think the same organization that that helps out or funds or whatever. The Harry Sisson, that little young guy that's always like, oh my God, whoever the candidate is for the Democrat Party is the greatest ever. Oh my God, I'm going to totally vote for them. You know, those two guys. It's like Harry and some other dude named like Chris Mowry or something like that. So those are like the young college guys. And she's like, I guess, according to her, the old hag. It's not really language I would use, but like, whatever. I think that she's probably just making it up, but hey, maybe somebody did say that about her. But anyway, that's who she is. And I think we're going to get into this trope of, oh, men are so intimidated by women. I don't really think that's actually the case. Not nearly as much as people like to believe. So let's continue listening and see what else she says. But I think right off the bat, we're starting with this notion that is just not really true. Like, are there men out there that are like, oh, a woman shouldn't lead? Yes, there are some men out there that believe that. Are they widespread? Is it like, Are they of substantial numbers? Nah, I doubt it. I don't think so. I'm just not like I meet and talk to people all over the place. Liberals, conservatives, commies, Proud Boys, Antifa. I don't think I've actually met any Antifa people, but I've talked to so many people and all over. And I've got a lot of friends that are Republican or Democrat. And I'm like, I don't know any of them. I can't think of one person out of thousands of people that I've talked to that I'm like, yeah, that person, they're afraid of women. I think this is just a silly trope that the Democrats just won't let die. Let's continue.
Sadly, I think a lot of men just don't like women. I don't
Yeah,
know if we
that's it.
scare them or annoy them or if they're threatened by us, because being beaten by a girl in anything from school to sports to work somehow makes them feel like less of a man. They are perfectly happy to have us raise them, to take care of them, to marry them, to bear their children, often to manage their entire lives.
Okay, I'm going to give her some credit here. Anybody that knows me knows that my wife is like always on my case about the calendar, right? Like she's like, "Hey, is it in the calendar?" I'm like, "Hey, what are we doing this morning?" She's like, "It's in the calendar." And I'll say, "Hey, what do you got going on later today?" She's like, "It's in the calendar." And then I'll be like, other times I'll say, "Hey, I've got this event tonight that I'm going to," and she's like, "But it's not in the calendar." So I get in a lot of trouble. So she really does try to manage the life, but I'm not intimidated by my wife. And let me tell you something. My wife is not an aggressive person, but she's a very assertive person. She has no problem telling you, her opinion, and she does it in a very tactful way. So she's not really rude. So people love her. My wife is well loved by people in her that she meets and runs across. They think she's great because she's got a great disposition and she's very cordial, even when she's being assertive. And she can be fiery too. Trust me, I've found out she can be fiery. But I'm not afraid of her any more than I am any other woman. So I think this is again we're just making up stuff. She's like, we're intimidated. Now, I will say this. If a guy gets beat by a girl in sports, yeah, he's going to get razzed by his buddies. Why? Because of a fact. Men, on balance, are stronger than women. So if a woman beats me at a sport, if I'm playing football and a woman tackles me and takes me down, yes, my buddies are going to give me a hard time because we all know the truth. The truth is, in most cases, I am stronger. I'm 120 pounds soaking wet. I'm 5'3", and I could physically overpower most women that I know. Why? Because I'm a man and I have strength that they don't have. Period. Even if I'm smaller. All right, let's continue.
But to answer to us, to look up to us, to admire us, that's a tough ask for a lot of men. And I have to say, I don't understand why. Look what's happening with Kamala Harris.
Oh, Kamala Harris. That's what this is all about. You're not going to support her because she's a woman. Here's a fun fact. I don't know if you know this. In 2008, and then again, I believe it was in 2012, but in 2008, there was a movement in the Republican Party to draft Condoleezza Rice. They begged her to run. Begged her, literally. They wanted her to run in 2008. Okay. And then they tried to get her in 2012 to be a running mate for John McCain. I think it was 2008, 2012. So no, this idea that, because one of two things is happening here. Either she's talking to Democrats, which I'll get to in a minute, or she's more than likely talking about Republicans and how they won't vote for her because she's a woman. And she's just finding some, this is just her cultural fight to have. And I don't think it's true when you look at history. I mean, the Republicans had Sarah Palin, whatever you think of her, she was a woman, right? They had Condoleezza Rice, who a lot of people liked. They tried to, they literally had there's a Wikipedia entry. Not that that means a lot, but there's a Wikipedia entry called the Draft Condi Movement. And they were literally trying to draft. It was they not only asked her to run as a black woman, right? And there's no unambiguously a black woman, right? There's no half Indian, half black. As far as I know, she was entirely black. Okay. And the Republicans wanted her to run. Whether she would have been a good candidate is not really relevant. The fact is, they admired a woman so much they wanted to vote for her and follow her. But that seems to be missing from this conversation. Why? Well, there's a narrative that has to be had. Democrats, liberals, people on the left, they have locked themselves in to this narrative that men don't like women. Let's continue.
She can't just have worked her ass off from her single mother middle class roots to become San Francisco's DA, then California's Attorney General, to a US Senator, and then the Vice President of the United States. No, you have to say she slept her way to the top.
Okay, so let's address that real quick. I already addressed it in a previous episode where I talked and I said, look, I think there's plenty of evidence to support that Kamala Harris was outwardly expressing identity with the Black community, right? Just same as she did with the Indian community. Right. I think it's there. I think when you go back, you can see that she was invited to events that were all Black events, like she was on panels with all Black people. So I think I think the argument to make that she never identified as Black is silly. Okay. And the question is, did she sleep her way to the top? Well, I don't think the evidence is there. She didn't sleep her way to the top per se. Everybody likes to throw out the name Willie Brown. Willie Brown was somebody that she had a relationship early on in her career. So at best, he gave her a little bit of an advantage by promoting her, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she would go on to win all these elections thereafter. So you can kind of make the argument that, yeah, she slept her way to the top, but it's not really a good argument and it falls apart very, very quickly. And I think this is politics. It is a rough contact sport. And so therefore, what that means is people are going to say all kind of crazy things. And this is not new. I don't know why Politics Girl is acting crazy like it's all new, right? And that's how people perceive this. And they're like, oh, this is the worst. Politics is so nasty. Do you remember, what was it, the election of, I think it was like 1828 or something like that? I can't remember exactly. But it was Thomas Jefferson. Was it Thomas Jefferson? Yes. Yeah. No, Andrew Jackson. It was Andrew Jackson. And his wife died shortly after the election. And he blamed it on the rhetoric of politics because it was very nasty. She technically was not divorced when she married him. So people called her a bigamist, which was a big deal in that day, right? Like, this is the kind of nastiness that has existed forever, right? And it's not limited to just the women candidates. The men candidates get it too. I mean, has she not seen the effigies of Bush being burned? Like, they're like, oh, this guy is so terrible. We should burn an effigy of him. Like, politics is nasty. And I'm just going to say, if women aren't prepared to deal with all the BS that men get, then no, they don't belong in it because it's a nasty sport. It just is. It shouldn't be. We should all sit around kumbaya talking about policy happily and then say, nope, I disagree. Thank you so much, but I'm going to vote for this guy now. Yeah, it would be nice if we did that, but we don't. And we don't do it to anybody. So she can just piss off with all this whining. But anyway, there's more. Let's listen.
She can't just have won the debate with Trump.
She
had
didn't.
to be wearing an earpiece or getting the questions ahead of time or using witchcraft.
Okay, so again, maybe not those specific arguments were made to other candidates, but these kind of comments toward a candidate happen all the time. Oh, they got fed the questions a little bit early. Oh, the moderators were in favor of them. Oh, this, oh, that, right? Constantly. And this is not just this election. She's just hyper focusing on this one election as if we're in a vacuum where none of these things have ever happened before to any other candidates, and men have never had their lives dragged through the dirt for politics, right? Remember Brett Kavanaugh? The left made fun of him because he was crying because he was being accused of something that nobody had any meaningful evidence for. It was like some woman came out of nowhere 30 years later, just in time to try to obstruct him from getting this really esteemed position. How convenient, right? Some woman came out, said that this thing happened, couldn't remember any of the details. Nobody that was present could verify these details. So it was literally just an accusation. He's being dragged through the mud over something that he claims he didn't do. She's like, well, I was kind of drunk and I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was him, right? He had his whole life dragged through the mud. But then all of a sudden people say Kamala sleeps to the top. And now we've got somebody going, well, you just hate women. You're just afraid of women. What does that make you when you talk trash about a man? Maybe you're a misandrist. Maybe you hate men. Maybe that's why there's never one in your damn videos. You never talk about them. I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting passionate here.
Now Trump's on the campaign trail calling her stupid. He
I
recently
mean-
started saying she has substance abuse issues. He is one step away from calling her a dumb bitch.
I mean, I don't call women bitches. Not my thing. But have you seen any of her videos? She doesn't strike me as the sharpest knife in the marble bag. Just saying.
And the people wearing the "Ho is gotta go" shirts think it's awesome. This woman is killing.
Okay. Ho has got to go. Again, not something I would wear. If my son were of age, I wouldn't condone him wearing it either. I would say, son, that's not how we behave. We are better than that. That's just not my thing. I don't think I think it's poor form. But again, it's free speech. And it matches t-shirts that people have worn about male candidates, right? F Trump, F Biden. Like they said, there's all these kind of different shirts, and I can't think. I know there's more, but I can't think of them, right? But the point is, again, either women want to be treated like men or they don't. And it really sounds from Politics Girl like she doesn't want women treated like men. She wants them to be treated extra dainty in an environment that has been well established to be nasty, whether it should be or not.
Killing it on the campaign trail. But what are we talking about? How she's not connecting enough with men. Black men, Latino men, young white men. I don't get it. Men don't need a functioning democracy. They don't need their pre-existing conditions protected by the Affordable Care Act. Men don't need the Social Security program to stay intact. They won't be affected if their parents have to come and move in with them when Trump cuts their benefits. They don't have student loans or want to start a business or buy a first home. Men didn't benefit from the expansion of universal broadband or the American infrastructure being shored up around the country. You don't think men are affected when women get pregnant when they don't want to be pregnant? It won't matter to them if they become single fathers when their wives or girlfriends die from treatable pregnancy complications because of Republican laws? The thing is, I don't think Kamala Harris has a problem with men so much as men have a problem with women.
See, here again, let's ask ourselves, are there men that supported some of those things that other men said, I don't support and I'm not supporting you? If there are, and the answer to that question is yes, there are, then it's not about women. When Joe Biden was supporting those things, a lot of the same men were like, I'm not supporting you. And did they just hate men all of a sudden? No, they didn't. This is how we can tell it's not about equality. It's about demagoguery. That's what it's about for some of these people. It's about demagoguery. Because when we look and we compare in other situations, we find that, hey, your argument about men hating women doesn't really hold up because they've treated men similarly. In some cases, exactly. And in many cases, the shoe has literally been on the other foot and your ass didn't say a thing. All right, let's try to finish up this video. I'm going to try not to intervene.
Women are fine when we facilitate your lives. But as soon as we try to lead, that has men feeling some sort of way. And those men are...
Okay, I can't. Okay. How many times have you heard a man talk trash about his boss? How many times have you heard a man talk trash about the mechanic? Come home and be like, oh, that mechanic, he's trying to he's trying to Jew me or whatever crazy thing he says, right? Like, how many times have you heard this? Men talk trash about other men, sometimes roughly. Come home and they're like, Mom, my boss is an asshole. What a jerk. I hate him. I wish he would go fall off a long pier, right? Like, people talk trash about him. So again, there's plenty of evidence that men treat other men just as harshly. But somehow, when it happens to a woman, it's like new and brand new.
considering giving the middle finger to the women of this country, to the world order, to the democratic nations of the world, to our veterans, to the functioning of our U.S. government, to the freedom of every minority under its control, to their own futures, just to hand over control of the most powerful nation in the world to a dementia-riddled, convicted felon and adjudicated rapist who praises dictators and can't make it through a speech, let alone a presidential term, because they just can't quite get over the woman thing. And that is such a shame, because she is clearly the far better choice.
Oh, clearly. She can't seem to answer anything. We're not going to go into all those details. Look, I think we're done with the video. There's only like 20 seconds left. And honestly, it's driving me crazy. The fact of the matter is, I don't think that men actually hate women. I think what's happening is that the Democratic Party, liberals, leftists in general, I think they take an approach and they treat people like children. So let me show you really quickly before we wrap this up, this final comment that I made a while back. Let's see, where are you here? Let's bring it up on the screen. And there you go. Okay. All right. So here's what I said a while back. I said, recently, Harris Walz supporters told women to vote Harris Walz that their husbands wouldn't know, told men supporting women was okay. Remember the Man Enough ad? They clarified that Trump serving French fries was staged, as if we didn't know that. They informed us that Trump is not an NFL player. If you didn't see it, somebody made one of those AI images of Trump in a football jersey looking like he was playing football. And they literally fact checked it. And they were like, Trump is not, a football player. Like, these people treat everybody like children. And then you wonder why people don't want to support your candidate. Well, one, your candidate doesn't have, or at least started out not really having any policies. So that was a problem. And then you figured that out and you're like, all right, let's get some policies put together. So then you put some policies together. Then she comes out and she can't seem to answer questions to a media that's actually sympathetic to her. We've all seen the videos. She doesn't appear to be smart. She doesn't appear to be on it. And then you turn around and after all of this, you're like, well, you just hate women. I think, what is it that where they say like every accusation is a confession? I think people on the left actually dislike men and women. I don't even think they like people. Maybe what's the word? They're misanthropes. They don't even like people. I'm just sure of it. Anyway, that's my show. Let's see. We got any more comments here? Let's see. Let's see. That right here. Why is it on the screen? Let me go back here. There we go. Let's try this. Oh, there it goes. Oh, I see. I had a different monitor. Oh, there we go. All right. So Time Surfing Alien says, I don't hate women. They are half the reason I'm here. Yes. And like most men have a woman in their lives that they absolutely love and they would defend with a vigor or even viciously, right? They have a wife or a girlfriend, a mother, a sister, a daughter. And men will defend these women or girls, depending on age. They will defend them with a viciousness. Most men that I know, even the Republican ones, right? And yes, even the Democratic ones, I think. There might be a few out there. But most men will defend the women in their life. They don't hate women. The fact of the matter is, politics is a full contact sport. And if you're not ready to be in the political rugby game, get the hell out. And if you're in the political rugby game and you're getting hit, hopefully I'm making a good analogy here, and you're getting hit and your supporters are whining on your behalf, tell them to knock it off because it's not doing you any favors. Kamala Harris should come out. If I were advising her, I would say, you need to come out and you need to tell every one of your supporters, stop labeling people man haters. I don't think people hate me because I'm a woman. And in fact, even if they do, I have the resolve to take it. So I appreciate you all defending me on my behalf, but you don't need to because it's not bothering me. And don't worry about it. That would be a better way to approach it if I were advising her. But I'm not because I want Chase Oliver to win. Anyway. All right, folks, that's my show today. Hope you enjoyed it. Went a little bit long, no big deal. Hope you found the episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Remember, again, this week, it will be 7:30. Next week, it will be noon for about a week, maybe another additional day or two after the fact while my wife is on vacation. So So just so you know, make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com or rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, drop me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.